Today, we are going to be diving in and talking about the principle as above, so below, as within, so without, because this is not just a fun little Pinterest quote. It's not just poetry. Hermes wrote about it, the rabbis guarded it, the East lived it, and the Bible encoded it. So we are really going to be diving in and studying the cross-cultural comparison, and then we're going to be learning how to actually apply this law to our lives so that we can start creating lives that we love, because whether you realize it or not, you are creating from it, and whether you also realize it or not, it is being used against you if you are not the one using it. So grab your Bibles, grab a cup of coffee, and let's get ready to ruffle some religious feathers on this week's episode of the God Core Podcast. So let's start with Hermeticism. That which is above is like that which is below. That comes from the Emerald Tablets. But Hermeticism goes deeper than just that one line. It teaches that reality exists in planes. You have a mental plane, a spiritual plane, a physical plane, a mind, body, soul, and that the mental plane organizes all others, because in the Hermetic philosophy, which if you've never read this book, I would encourage you to maybe get it, check it out, start studying and seeking the wisdom and knowledge for yourself. That is the second law, the law of correspondence. It's the principles that govern our universe. And the first one is the law of mentalism. Because the key is the universe itself is mind-like. We are imago Dei, some might say that is the image of God. We are made in consciousness and reflecting consciousness itself. So since consciousness creates mentally, we too create mentally with these principles that govern the laws of nature. But sadly, because of distortion, we have certain religions, like let's say Christianity, that would argue with you, no, the laws of God are the 10 commandments and then all the ones that are found in Leviticus. And it's like, no, those are the 10 words when you translate it to the Hebrew, first of all. Second of all, those are the laws of a tribe in covenant with a false deity, because they worship the war god Yahweh, the false I am, and then before that, they worship the god El, which was head of the Canaanite pantheon. Again, false deities. Life itself has laws like such that you can learn to use and apply for your life, and if you don't, they're going to continually be used and applied to your life by other people to control you. Because how Hermetic creation flow works is you have the all, that's what they refer to as the universal mind, universe, we are all one, okay? God is omni, all. Thought and logos, vibration, and then form, because thought, frequency, matter, okay? That is how creation works, so that which is above is like that which is below. And so now moving on to the Jewish Merkava, in the Mishnah Chagiga, it says, whoever speculates upon what is above, what is beneath, as above, so below, what came before and what comes after, because the Hermetic principle also goes on to say, as within, so without. And it has a warning. And this is where it gets interesting, because people will sometimes read that quote, as I talked about in my Merkava video, don't ask questions. But what that's actually saying is unprepared minds trying to grasp ultimate reality can become destabilized. Okay, and this is their warning. This was very hidden esoteric knowledge that they did keep very guarded because it is very powerful. You are a very powerful being, and without the proper wisdom and understanding, especially without the proper grounding of one's chariot, of actually having a firm foundation and knowing your true identity and so forth, these principles can harm you. Think of giving a firearm to a toddler. That would harm them. It is a tool that can be used for hunting. It can be used for protection, but you have to know how to use it. So these two are tools that can help you in your life to create a life that you want to live, but they have to be properly understood and properly used, or else it's going to be used against you. So their warning ultimately is about spiritual maturity and psychological safety. As even Paul talked about, referencing Isaiah, you guys are on milk, you should be on meat. And then when you zoom out into later Jewish mysticism, from Merkava to when they switched over to their Kabbalah, you see the same principles showing up in their tree of life. You have Ein Sof, Sapphira, and then Malkuth, and that is talking about the flow in the mechanisms of creation. Okay, because they have their what is above, their divine emanations, what is beneath, the layers of reality, the before, which is infinite source. Again, what most people call God is just infinite source. It's consciousness itself, and if you know metaphysics, that's how creation is created in a spiral. And then after is the restoration and unity. Because for the Kabbalah practitioners, reality is stepped down through levels, and this is not just cosmic, this is psychological. You are a walking tree of life, a living as above, so below system. Okay, you've got heaven and you've got earth. You've got a mind and you've got a body. You've got a masculine and you've got a feminine. And so they used symbolism, they used cataphragtic and apophragtic kind of teachings to explain and encode the principles and the realities of our universe. And then when you study Egypt, you see that they have their mat, which is their creative speech. Now, Egypt did not say as above, so below. They said it in their own terminology, which was the 1 becomes 3 and the 3 becomes 1. And I do actually have a video on the Trinity if you want to check that out, because they lived it. Ma'at is their cosmic order, their balance, their truth, and their harmony, and it governs the stars, the society, and the human heart. And their principle is the same order that governs the cosmos, also is established in every individual. Because in Egyptian cosmetology, they believe that creation happens through speech. You know, in the beginning was the word. Christianity thinks that they came up with that one, not realizing that that group of people lived in Egypt. Okay? And in their creation stories, the god Puta creates the world by conceiving in the heart and speaking it into existence. In the Eastern traditions, you see that the Buddha says, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. Okay, your inner state is the cause, as within, and then the life experience is the effect, as without. Okay, what's ever going on in here, whatever is invisible will not remain visible, and it will become visible as the Bible says. And that is why the Buddha very much taught emptying your mind. And that's not entertaining demons. That is learning to become mindful and aware, because these Eastern cultures, even Jesus taught it in his own way of take no thought 5 times. You need to practice meditation. You need to learn to command your chariot, which is what Merkava is, of your mind and body, and get it into a state of coherence. Okay, nervous system terminology, you need to get your nervous system out of survival, out of fight or flight. You need to get your mind out of unconsciously identifying with the past or the future, and you need to get yourself into the present moment. And so meditation helps you to focus into the present moment, to bring your awareness to the now. Because the present now is the only moment you ever have, and this is where the eternal I am creates. Your subconscious only creates with I am statements, so all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And if you're unconscious, then you're probably identifying with your brain and your mind, you know, your ego, your false self, your carnal mind, again, different terminologies on the culture. And so when your brain gives you a thought, which your brain is just a tool, the mind is just a tool, and it gives you a thought of, oh, I'm so stupid, and you identify with that, you're now putting that limit over yourself, and now you're going to become that result. Okay, that is the power of your mind, and that is the power of this principle. And then when you study the Tao, to the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. Yin Yang, as above, so below, and that's actually symbolism, which we'll talk about shortly. But the Yin Yang shows that inner and outer are reflections. Balance inside equals harmony outside, as heaven is on earth. And then in the Gita, which is the Hindu practice, Krishna, which also means Christ, by the way, teaches that mind shapes action and action shapes destiny. And then even deeper, the self, Atman, equals ultimate reality, the Brahman. So the above and the within are the same. And so as you're already seeing across all of these different cultures, they are repeating the same principle in their own language. And to ground this now in neuroscience, for those of you that like modern language, because before we had neuroscience, before we had metaphysics, we had scriptures meant to teach. We had stories encoding the secrets of the universe and the secrets of you. And so now we're going to talk about this in modern language known as neuroscience. And neuroscience explains how the within becomes the without. And the step 1 is the belief becomes the neural wiring. Your brain builds pathways of thought between repetition, emotion, and attention. What you think becomes structurally encoded. Your thoughts truly do become things. Okay? That is why all that we are is the result of what we had thought. Step 2 of that process, it then starts programming your reality filter, known as the RAS system, or the reticulating activating system. And I love that system in the brain, because your brain then begins to filter what you notice and what you ignore. Your beliefs literally create your perception. Then step 3 of that process is the nervous system of your internal state determines safety versus threat, expansion versus contraction, and then that creates behavior to environment, which is step 4, because your state then drives your actions, your habits, and your outcomes. So your inner patterns become your perceived reality, which then becomes your lived reality. And so now we're going to move on to what the Bible, this beautiful collection of books, has to say about this principle. So if you have your Bibles, feel free to turn there. If not, I'm just going to read them to you. Which says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Yes, okay? This is not a passive prayer. This is alignment language. When you understand how stories encode teachings, and you understand and that these stories known as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are in fact encoded in a case of mythology, you read this on a whole new level. Because the verse right before that, it says, after this manner, therefore pray, our Father which art in heaven. Where did Jesus say the kingdom of heaven was? Luke 17:21. The kingdom of heaven is within you. That word in the Greek is entos. It means linguistically inside of. But because we read this Bible through year after year and century after century of Christian doctrine and theology and fog, those theologies have distorted these texts. And so people do. They read that through their theology, through the mind blocks that they have, and they're like, no. That was talking about Jesus. Jesus was among them. No, that is not what that text is saying. Because all authority has been given unto you from heaven and earth. You are the one creating your perception and therefore creating your life. You are not just a mere bystander in your life. Matthew 16:19, as well as also Matthew 18:18 says, whatever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Meaning, earth is responding to heaven. Earth is responding to heaven, or heaven is responding through aligned humans. Either way, it shows interconnected authority between realms. Because when you are connected, okay, you're known as earth, when you are connected to source, to divine, the super conscious, God, life, different terminologies based on the culture, now heaven starts responding to you. And that's where you bring heaven down on earth. Okay, because when you're connected to source, when you are actually practicing meditation and you actually have your pineal gland open and you're actually able to imagine and create the life that you want, you are now connecting to that higher power. Okay, you are connecting to that presence, and then that presence is leading and directing you. You have the I and the me working simultaneously. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Okay, and then as Matthew 7:18 says, a good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. You will always reap what you sow. Whatever you're sowing up here in your mind, whatever you are sowing in your thoughts with the words that you create, which then gets sown into your internal perception and into your internal identity and reality, will become manifested in your external reality. As within, so without. As Genesis 1:26 says, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And so male and female, yin and yang, and we're going to talk about symbolism shortly. And then when he shall appear, we shall be like him. 1 John 3:2. This is the microcosm and the macrocosm language, which is also another terminology. I actually want to write that down for you. And so that starts to then reflect the microcosm. Humanity reflects the macrocosm. The uni, again, we're all one, the all. Universe / what people might call God. And then also in Hebrews 8:5, you see that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. Referring back to Moses and Exodus, the mount, higher place of consciousness. Okay, Hebrews 11:13, that which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Invisible becomes visible. Nothing that is hidden will remain hidden. It will become visible. It will manifest itself, even in your body. When you have unhealthy thoughts up here and you have chaos up here, and then you have energy that then gets stored into your energy field, or emotions that get stored into the body because you just suppress and dissociate rather than feeling and processing, then those invisible things will over time manifest themselves into your body. Genesis 28:12, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top it reaches heaven. You have a very beautiful spine with 33 vertebrae. 33 is 3 times 3 equals 9 is consciousness. That is the number of the universe. Why do you think there's 33-degree Masons? Why do you think the rumor is Jesus died at 33? Again, that's a different rant for a different time. I encourage you to look up Nikola Tesla 369 number theory. But the point is, symbolically, continuous exchange between realms, not separation, connection. And Jacob wrestled with God, and then he saw him face to face, and I shall name this place pineal gland. You also have in 1 John 1-3, in the beginning was the Word, and all things were made by him. Does that sound maybe like Egyptian principles? Either way, the Greek word logos is not just word. Okay, it is ordering principle, reason, blueprint, and structuring intelligence, because pattern then becomes material reality. And this is not a manifest whatever you want kind of sense. What it is saying is reality is structured through an underlying intelligence before it appears. Because this, as above, so below, as within, so without, is the law of correspondence, and before that you have the law of mentalism. So reality is structured through the underlying intelligence, consciousness, life itself, before it appears, and that's where I think sometimes in our culture people get frustrated, especially when they are trying to understand. You know, you start waking up and you're like, oh, there's a lot more to be seen here, and then you're starting to seek, to find, and you're trying to understand the governing principles, so that way you can start creating a life that you want. Because nobody wants to live a life that they hate. Nobody wants to not get the things that they desire. Everybody wants that dream, but it takes you, the initiative, to realize all authority has been given unto you and to actually apply it to your life. And so people do, they get upset when they go try to start finding these things, and then they start finding people, you know, these gurus that I like to call armchair occultists, that read one book on the law of attraction, and they're like, hey guys, if you'll manifest the Lamborghini. And it's like, faith without works is dead there, buddy. Like, there's some pieces you're missing to that. And that's where people get frustrated. And then they say, oh, this is all hogwash, and then they go back to what's certain. You know, that's demonic, go back to Christianity, let Jesus save you. And it's like, okay? Because there are principles, and these are real things. And that's why Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Mind renewal is life transformation. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Mind renewal is life transformation, because transform is the deep structural change, and renewing is the repattering of perception. So when you change the internal framework, you change your lived experiences, and that takes time. Which, as I also think, sometimes people just hope that it magically happens overnight, and it's like, Rome was not built in a day, brick by brick. If you have an entire house in your mind of negativity, you gotta now switch that and start pouring your energy into building what you want, rather than focusing on what you don't want. So you have to change your perceptions, you have to change your inner identity, your faith, then you have to change your behavior, your habits and actions, or what people like to call works. So you have to change it, because as Proverbs says, Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinketh, so is he. And even the Gita refers to that. By a man's faith, that's what he'll become. With that, the Hebrew concept of heart is more about the mind, the will, and the inner self. That is what that symbolizes, your heart. Okay, as a man thinketh in his heart, in his subconscious, so is he. And so this is less about positive thinking and more about your internal state becomes your lived identity. Whatever beliefs you have up here, whatever experiences that you are still harboring up here, whatever emotions, all of these things are affecting your perception and affecting the way that you move throughout your daily life. As Romans 1:20 says, the invisible things of him are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Creation reveals the unseen. And you see that. As above, so below, okay? When you look at the sky, you see what? Lightning. Now look at the nervous system with all of the nerves, okay? And then you look at a tree, or you look at broccoli. You see with the Fibonacci, you have a spiral of hair on your head, you have it in a sunflower, and so forth. You know, you have it in the moon shell, in the ocean, and then also, I love this. I love studying this, guys, okay? You see that also playing out with animals. You have above lightning bugs, and then in the ocean, you have flashlight fish, and they kind of look like lightning bugs from a distance, as below. So this is constantly repeating. These patterns and principles are what govern our universe, the earth, and yourself. Colossians 1:16, all things are created by him, visible and invisible, from source. Okay, and this is where we're going to start talking about symbolism. From source, all things are created. Now, people, sadly, they have misperceptions because of bad theology about God. Okay, but here, this is how consciousness creates. This is where we start getting into metaphysics. Now you have yang and yin, yin and yang, so forth. Invisible. In the 4D, it must come down into the 3D. Reality is simultaneous. Both layers exist at the same time. You know, you see that in, I think it's the book of Joel. Let those who are weak say, I am strong. You can both be poor and thinking rich at the same time. You can both have had the worst day of your life and start thinking about good things. Psalms 33:6, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. Genesis 1:3, and then God said, let there be light, and there was light. Because you have pattern before form. Pattern generates reality. The invisible precedes the visible. The pattern exists internally. Internal state becomes identity. Change the internal, you transform the external and align with the higher pattern. Align with source itself. what you like to call God. We do. We have Yang and we have Ying. This is source. This is what people like to call God. Okay, it's the invisible. It's the invisible thing that governs our lives. So let's strip this down. What does this pattern and principle actually mean? I want to start writing this down so that way you guys can understand it a little bit clearer, because it does us no good if we don't actually apply it. You know, if you just study your Bible, it's not going to actually feed you. You actually have to enter into it and transform your life with it. So let's strip this down. Okay, let's take it back to the bones and let's actually get the meat out of this lesson. As above, so below. Patterns flow downward. From higher consciousness goes into lower consciousness. Okay? As within, so without. Patterns flow outward. The inner reality reflects then into the outer reality. The unseen organizes the seen, and the inner organizes the outer. That is essentially what it's saying. Because what does above actually mean? If you watched my Merkava video, we talked about this a little bit. It is the masculine principle. So above in teachings, you know, in symbolism, you have father mind, and then you have mother nature. Okay, we use cataphragtic and apophatic teachings to kind of talk about and explain principles that don't really have a sense of being, because God, omni, all, life, is gender neutral in its core value, but then we do express the expressions of it in masculine and feminine forms. So this is your masculine. This is also known as heaven. This is your feminine, and this is also known as earth. Different cultures use different symbolism that they had available to them. And that's also where you see in, you know, the Bible that Christians love to take out of context. Christ is head of the body. Christ, that's your anointing. That's your true nature. You know, Son of Man, Paul used the terminology Christ. Source, one. Okay, there's oneness. There is neither male nor female, Greek nor Jew. There is simply Christ, because we are all connected. That is why love your neighbor as yourself, because when you're hurting your neighbor, you're hurting yourself and ultimately hurting life itself, which is God. So you have Christ as head of the body, and then you have the man, and then the woman. Man, and then the woman. It goes heaven to earth. Okay, mind, your logic, your intellect, you know, your thinking capacity should be ruling over the emotions, because the emotions will toss you like waves of the sea. Okay, when the emotions rule, they will lead you astray. And then also when your heart's wicked, that can lead you astray too. And that's why they have to be balanced. Husbands submit to your wives, wives submit to your husband. Husband, wife, symbolism. So above, this represents pattern, blueprint, intelligence, thought, and logos. Now you have below. Below is your form, your behavior, your circumstance. So this is the pattern that we're starting to see, as above, so below. And when these are put together, you know, mind, body, because that's also what this means. Because this is your mind, this is your body, this is your cause, and this is your effect. Because this is the creation mechanism. And that's why you need to also balance your chariot, tying back into Merkava. Or if you ever study tarot cards, you'll know that that's one of the major arcana, one of the major secrets of the universe, because that's what arcana means. And we're actually going to talk about that here in just a moment, because when you pair heaven and earth together, you get this symbolism, okay? And this is the creation mechanism. Every act of creation follows this flow. Pattern above becomes the expression below, and internalization within. Okay? When you have a thought and a belief, and then you get the feeling, the emotion, okay? When you have a father and a mother, there is an integration, an internalization process in your body, in your state of being, before what? A child is born. And that's where sometimes people, they don't realize that there is this in-between of you think a thought and then it kind of happens. And so sometimes people don't realize that there is this process of creation. There's an in-between stage, just like, let's say if you were buying an Amazon, okay? Let's say you buy something off Amazon. You buy the product, you hit ship, and you buy it, and there it doesn't just poof into your house. There is a process on which it shows up. And so when you are starting to use these principles to create the life that you want to live, to start embodying and visualizing the identity and thinking it and feeling it, you have to hold that knowledge and that knowing of, yep, it's showing up on Friday. It's gonna be here on Friday. I am 100% positive, because Amazon. You trust Amazon, so trust the universe. You don't create from the outside in, you create from the inside out. And sometimes we try to do this backwards. We're like, oh, my life sucks out here, not realizing that the circumstances of which you're seeing in your life are just information reflecting what's happening up here. Now, I'm not saying every single experience you have is because of something in here, okay? I'm not saying that. There are sometimes experiences and things that happen in our life that are out of our control, okay? Sometimes people are really mean to you. Sometimes things happen, maybe somebody's raped or molested. That is not your fault. Do not blame yourself for that, okay? Sometimes experiences are out of our control, but on our personal creation level and our reactions, those are 100% our control in the perceptions that we take on. So do not take credit for other people's reactions, because everyone is also experiencing life at their own time. But what I am saying, though, is when you look at your life and you're looking at your bank account and you're like, oh, there's not enough money in here, this, that, the other, I hate my job, and you're getting like frustrated because you see mess after mess after mess, your home is usually a reflection of what's going on up here, okay? So when you're chaotic up here and it's disorganized up here, your house is probably disorganized and chaotic out here. So instead of trying to fix out here, because a lot of times we like to try to become what? Whitewashed tombs. We try to fix our appearance, put on a mask, perform better, clean up our house, make everything look good. You have to change it from the inside out. If you don't take out that plant that's bad from the roots, that weed, it will end up destroying your garden. Okay, so if you want a peaceful life, if you want a beautiful life, you gotta first fix the soil, and you gotta first fix the seeds that are being planted into the soil up in your mind. And that is why repetition matters, because what is repeated stabilizes in reality. And that is why rituals and prayer and meditation and habits exist. Christians, they like to call it prayer, okay? You gotta keep praying to God, pray. Daniel prayed 3 times a day, and then witches just call that spell casting. If you know anything about witchcraft, they don't just say the spell once. They chant it over and over and over, because repetition matters. Your words create. By the power of your tongue is life and death. As a man thinketh, so is he. By your words you are condemned. By your words you are blessed. Your words are your perception of things. And that's why you're also supposed to tithe 10%. Christians think that's money. No, that's literally just Christian doctrine because they want it taxes, okay, when you study it. You need to take this 10% conscious part of your brain and give it to things that you want, because then your life shall follow it, because then the 90% of your brain takes orders from that. And if you're unconscious, then this conscious part of your brain is just dissecting whatever is being controlled by you. And you see the same structure reappearing with atoms in the solar system, the brain, and the universe, thought, and reality. And that's correspondence. Not metaphor, that's structure. Okay, so let's make this real in the identity. Let's use our identities, because that's me. I'm all about belief systems. I'm all about fucking around and finding out, testing these things. If you say in your identity, I am negative, okay, not enough, you say that, your internal state then is becoming of fear and of constriction. The behavior then is hesitation, overthinking, procrastination. You're not probably very confident. You're very doubtful. And the reality then becomes missed opportunities. As in the words of my uncle, the best piece of advice I've ever been given, honestly, in recent years, is there is a seat for every ass, and there is somebody less qualified than you doing what you want because they had the audacity to do it. Because they believed in themselves and they believed that they could do it. Life does not respond to potential. Life responds to action. Life cannot deny itself to the one who gives life their all. Okay, but now if you flip it and you have the identity of I am capable, and you start ingraining that into your body, now your internal state becomes expansion and safety. The behavior then becomes action and visibility, and then the reality is opportunities. That is correspondence in motion. Okay, this is your elements. This is all of the elements put together. And then in the center, you have ether. 6 is embodiment, because that's also, not to go back on to Nikola Tesla, 3 is creation. Okay, it's what you need, hence the Trinity. 6 is embodiment, okay? Embodiment of creation of yin and yang, heaven and earth, masculine and feminine, you're embodying. And 9 is the number of life itself, okay? Consciousness. And you see these numbers continually appear because the ancients were very big on their numbers. With 6 is 6 days of creation, embodiment, okay? The invisible becomes visible. And then consciousness itself, that's the number of life or God. But 6, embody. You're embodying your chariot. You're embodying these principles of harmony of opposites, mercy and justice, spiritual material, heaven and earth are connected. Again, micronism and macronism. So now to move on to the next symbols I want to show you, I'm going to put them up on screen here. I want you though to first pause. If you are watching this, we should always be practicing mindfulness. We should always be aware of how our bodies are operating, because these are our chariots. These are how we get throughout our day-to-day life. So I want you to take note on how your body reacts to some of these symbols. Because as I'm going to talk about here shortly with the shadow side of things, there are certain groups, okay, secret societies, that have started to program you to believe that bad is good and good is bad. And so they have begun to associate bad with certain symbols, when in reality those symbols are just encoding the principles that they are using against you to keep you in a slave mind. So when I bring up these symbols, I want you to take note on how your body reacts to them. What is the first thought that comes into your mind, and what is the first reaction? This first symbol, it is what? The Freemason symbol. Do you see the point of as above, so below? Okay, they encoded all of these principles because a 33-grade Mason is the highest honor. That is consciousness itself. That is wisdom embodied, knowledge embodied, because 3 times 3 equals 9, or 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 9. Okay, as above, so below. This next symbol I want to show you, it is tarot cards. Now, yes, tarot cards can be used for divination, but they were originally created in the 15th century by an Italian artist for playing cards for the upper class. Upper class who would have known these principles because they would have been a part of these societies. So as you see, we have the magician. The magician is the second person in the major arcana. Okay, it's the second archetype. The first one is the fool. Fool's not really looking where he's going. He's just going through life. Woohoo! Everything's great. Yep, this is the truth. Magician starts to realize there's a lot more to reality. And as you see his hands, okay, as above, so below, he has one hand to the sky and he has one hand pointing down, because you are the interconnection. Life is being created from you. Life comes from you. Consciousness comes from you. And the magician is not magic as fantasy. He is a co-creator. He is the human expressing the divine, expressing itself in embodiment, and he is a co-creator. He receives the pattern from above, he embodies it within, and brings it into earth through word, will, choice, and action. For the magician, as above is the vision, as below is the embodiment, as within the identity, and so without the life you create. And he has all the elements on the table. You have 5 elements, okay? You have earth, air, fire, water, ether. And then depending on the culture, the Chinese, they use wood and so forth. But the magician teaches that heaven is not some place that you escape to, but rather it is a pattern you learn how to embody. Christians, they can't wait till they get to heaven. Just wait. I can't wait till I get to heaven one day and there'll be no more crying of tears, because they haven't, restored their identity. They're still living from a fractured psyche. And Jesus never taught about escaping earth. I hate to break it to you. He said that you can be entering into heaven today. That salvation can be today. That restoration can be today. That no more crying of tears can happen today. Because now is the only moment that you have in this reality. Finally, this last symbol is the symbol that I also want you to take very note inside of yourself, how you react. This is the Baphomet. It is French. It comes from an artist, Eliphas Lévy. It was created in the 19th century, and it represents the one hand pointing up, the one hand pointing down, as above, so below, because hand symbols are a real thing. And you also change the energy in your body with that. That's a different anthem for a different time. And he does have a masculine arm and a feminine arm. And the primary meaning is that the microcosm, humanity, reflects the macrocosm, God, the universe, meaning heaven and earth are connected. All authority has been given unto you from heaven and earth. You are the co-creator of your life. And it was a gesture to central occultism. And we could spend a lot of time talking about this. But the point is, even though modern interpretations associate this image with evil, with Satanism or Gnosticism or paganism, it was an image of esoteric balance and knowledge. And then there is some rumors that the Knights of Templar worship this. But then when you also understand the Pope and how the politics that were happening with all of those groups going on, you start to realize that, maybe these symbols, yes, there is things that are evil in our world, but most of these symbols are just encoding knowledge. They're just encoding things that then you've been indoctrinated to believe are evil, so that way you associate, that law is above, so below. That's paganism. That's heresy. Don't look at it, because now you're a slave. Okay, and that's actually what I want to kind of talk on and end with, is the shadow side of this law. Because if you are not the one using it to create, if you are not the one, as Habakkuk says, to see the vision, take the vision and run with it, see the vision, visualize what you want, okay, get that divine download from God, as some people might say, then embody it, okay, you got to run with it, make it become your identity, okay, by your faith, be it unto you, by your identity, be it unto you, and then be it unto you the life that you create, because faith without works is dead. If you do not learn to operate this, if you do not learn to balance your chariots, okay, your mind and your body, if you do not learn how to get your nervous system out of a survival mode and into a creation mode, because when it's in survival, it's consuming, you are not the master of your house. You are the servant, okay? You are the servant then, living and operating by the people who are using these principles and these laws of God to then command the world. And this is why control systems work. You watch my Americova video, you heard me talk about at the beginning, if you come from institutionalized religion, this might be hard for you to understand because you have mind blocks, because that's how cults work, okay? That is how control systems work. They give you mind blocks, because if you control somebody's belief, identity, and inner narrative, you control their behavior, their outcome, and ultimately you control society. Okay, if you control the within, you control the without. That is this principle. So control systems work by controlling people's perceptions, by controlling people's narratives. You see it with religion. Oh, you're unworthy. Oh, you're a sinner. Oh, you're less than. It's all fear-mongering. If you don't do this, if you don't use your free will, exactly as our God says, you're going to go to hell. There's no other way. It's all fear-mongering, because fear and shame and guilt keep you stuck in lower frequencies. Because when you're gratitude, and when you're happy, and when you're joyful, you also then start vibrating at higher frequencies, which is more magnetic, and then that goes into all those other principles, which then starts bringing what you want, and then momentum creates, and everything starts to snowball. And that's why when people look like it just one video took off and they succeeded, or one book or one movie, no, they had a momentum of building and building and building, of as within, so without, as above, so below, and then the momentum just started kicking off where everyone else started, oh, wow, that's there. And so Christianity and religious systems that do create these mind blocks, they create mind blocks and structured thinking of theology that train your brain to that if anything is said against a religion, it's satanic, it's demonic, that's a cult. If you can't question the doctrines, if you can't challenge the theology, if you can't have your own thought and opinion, if you are told to leave your brain at the door, my friend, you are in a control system. You should be in control of your house. That's why the Bible says the pastors have made their minds like a desolate wilderness. I don't want my mind to be like desolate wilderness. I want it to be a garden, because wilderness is also symbolism for confusion, for unknowing, okay? I want to know, okay? Wisdom is known by her children. If any of you lack wisdom, you should ask for it and it will be given unto you abundantly. And then in the Gnostic terminology, that would be known as Sophia, okay? Because if you have a father and you have a son, what are you missing? You're missing the feminine, okay? The feminine principle that also governs, because masculine and feminine is also one of these principles and laws, the law of gender, which is in everything. As above, so below is not just some pagan satanic teaching. That is indoctrination if you believe that. It was never also about just the sky and the earth. It was always ultimately about you, because you are the universe reflecting itself down here. Your mind is above. Your life, what you embody, is the below. Your inner world is the blueprint, and your outer world is built from it. And so the more you know thyself, which is also one of my favorite principles just to live by, the more you know me, you would know the Father. The healthier relationship and love that you have for yourself, the easier it is to also apply these principles, because love is the key that locks these things into place. And if you want to know where you sit, real easy, a bullshit-proof kind of test, go look in a mirror. Go look in a mirror today and put a hand on your heart and say, I love you. I'm so proud of you. I approve of you. You're doing a great job. And then insert your name. And do that 3 times. I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I love you so much. And speak life to yourself. And take note on what your brain tries to do and what your body tries to do. Because I guarantee, if it's your first time ever doing that, you might have mind blocks where the ego, this false self, Hasatan, starts coming up, and it's like, you're really doing this? This is so stupid. That's ridiculous. You don't need to do that to prove that you love yourself. Wow, you look ridiculous right now. Somebody's going to see you and make fun of you, and it's going to try to shoot you down. And that says, you've got thinking going against your true nature. And if your body reacts, if it gets tense, if it gets uncomfortable, that's also a good indicator that your nervous system is identifying with self-hate, okay, self-rejection. But you should not be rejecting yourself. You should be loving yourself. You cannot hate yourself into a version that you love. You cannot hate your life into a life that you love. You have to love. Love is life. What is God? God is love. God is what? Omni. From love comes all things, because unconditional love, agape love, there is no limits to it. There is no terms and conditions. So if anybody's trying to sell you a deity that just loves you so much and then puts on terms and conditions of what will happen if you don't obey this deity and follow their stupid man-made laws, that's a false deity. You should run very far away from that, because the Spirit of the Lord brings liberty, not bondage. Okay, so if it's true, it's going to bring you freedom for your life, not bondage. Because whether you realize it or not, you are always creating from within.